That's what you get for walking in 30 seconds late. Chairman Hale, would you lead us in a prayer? Thank you, Chairman. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senator Rocky Adams, Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Elkins, Senator Herron, Senator Maiden, Senator Mays Bledsoe, Senator McDaniel, Senator Mills, Senator Rawlings,
Here.
Senator Tishner, Representative Baker, Representative Bivens, Representative Branscombe, Representative Callaway,
Present.
Representative Chester Burton,
Present.
Representative Decker, Representative Don Worth, Representative
I'm here. Sorry. Present.
Here.
Representative Griffey, Representative Hancock,
Here.
Representative Hodgson,
Here.
Representative Huff,
Here.
Representative Imes, Representative Cook, Representative Lehman,
I'm here.
Representative Chris Lewis, Representative Scott Lewis, Representative Lockett,
I'm here.
Representative Maddox, Representative Marzian, Representative Proctor, Representative Raymer, Representative Roberts, Representative Tate, Representative Thompson, Representative Tipton,
Here.
Representative Watkins, Representative Williams, Representative Witten,
Here.
And are there any committee members?
Sen-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Senator Nemes,
Sorry.
Present.
Representative Hale, and Chair Johnson.
Here. I guess we got to count these pesky chairmen, too. If there's anyone that walked in as we were doing, Senator Titchener's here.
Okay, thank you.
While they're counting the row, before we get started, I'll just go ahead and ask that everyone please remember to turn your microphones on when you got that bright green light to make sure that we can hear you. And then also, if you have your cell phones with you, of course you do, would you please silence them or turn them off? And while we're looking at the row, is there any members that would like to recognize any guests today? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we do have a quorum, and we are ready to do business. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for our October 21st meeting. I have a motion. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. All approved? All for? Any opposed? Motion carries. Second item on the agenda is a discussion of BR 25 for the 2026 regular session, which is an act relating to the prohibited uses of tax dollars and resources. And the primary sponsor is Senator Rawlings. Senator Rawlings, you have the floor. If you would introduce or let your cohorts there introduce themselves, we will get started.
Steve Rawlings, State Senate District 11.
Vanessa Grossel, State Rep District 88.
TJ Roberts, State House, District 66.
And before we start testimony, if you would raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate this. I've got the the KRS section up for all to see to show how very understandable and clear this statute is, that it requires tax dollars not to be used to advocate for or against a public question on the ballot. So despite this, during the 2024 election season, we saw with the School Choice Amendment, Issue 2, many of us witnessed and heard about school officials, including superintendents, at official meetings advocate against Issue 2, publicly advocate. We saw newspaper articles, social media, Facebook posts advocating against the ballot measure. So what this new bill would do, it would go beyond 65.013. I'll go back to this currently. It's about public resources. Local, state, and federal tax dollars must not be used to advocate for or against any public question appearing on the ballot, including constitutional amendments. This law protects the integrity of our democratic process by ensuring that taxpayer funds are used for public service, not political influence. However, while the statute now establishes this important prohibition, it currently lacks any enforcement mechanism. In other words, even when public officials or entities use tax dollars in violation of this law, there are no meaningful consequences. This gap has already been tested in practice. School authorities and other public bodies have engaged in advocacy using taxpayer-funded resources despite the clear statutory language. Because there are no penalties, the statute has little deterrent effect. The proposed provision to include civil and criminal penalties is not about punishing honest mistakes. It's about ensuring accountability and deterrence. When public institutions knowingly misuse tax dollars to influence voters, they undermine both public trust and the fairness of the electoral process. Adding enforceable penalties provides a necessary safeguard and one that upholds the rule of law and reinforces that no one, not even government entities, is above it. This amendment strengthens existing law by giving it real meaning. It ensures tax dollars are used only for their intended purposes, for such things as public service, education, and infrastructure, not political persuasion. In short, this proposal closes a loophole that has allowed violations to go unchecked. It takes a rule with no teeth and establishes clear, fair, and enforceable standards that protect both taxpayers and the integrity of Kentucky's elections. I respectfully urge the committee to support the inclusion of civil and criminal penalties in KRS 65.013 to ensure full compliance and accountability under Kentucky law. And we appreciate the opportunity to present this needed guideline mechanism. My colleagues are going to share about Representative Grossel is in Fayette County. She has parts of Fayette County, and we know the controversies there. And then we had a federal court case that came out of Pulaski County, for an example, that Representative Roberts will share. So, Representative Grossel.
Yes. And I also wish to thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for having us today. The Kentucky General Assembly allocated record funding for K-12 public school districts in the last budget cycle. This year, my community members in Lexington, Fayette County, analyzed the spending of the Fayette County Public Schools after news of a $16 million projected budget shortfall. One of the findings was that Fayette County has spent $98,000 this year alone on hiring third-party lobbyists and public relations firms, $38,000 of which was to help with a campaign to increase the occupational license tax and to protect the reputation of the school superintendent. I am here today to discuss expanding Senator Rawlings's legislative proposal to include prohibiting K-12 public school districts and education cooperatives from engaging in contracts with third-party lobbyists and PR firms. While the intent is primarily to ensure that the taxpayer dollars go to classrooms and toward student learning, I must also highlight that when K-12 public school districts hire third-party lobbyists, conflicts of interest arise. For example, The Kentucky Association of School Administrators, who awarded Superintendent Liggins with a Superintendent of the Year award this year, used the same lobbyist as Fayette County Public Schools. So you may ask yourselves, as I have done, is this a coincidence or a measure that was recommended by the lobbying firm to protect the reputation of the superintendent? Unfortunately, we have serious concerns about whether taxpayer-funded third-party lobbyists are able to deliver results that are in the best interest of our Kentucky taxpayers, students, and families. We believe that spending on third-party lobbyists is unethical and a gross misinterpretation of how funds should be utilized that were intended for student learning. Most of the school superintendents I have spoken with about this issue are barely covering their transportation and other costs and could not even fathom hiring an outside lobbyist in their district. It is important to note that internal government liaisons or district staff who register as lobbyists would be exempt from this legislation, as would KEA, CASA, CAS, and the other K groups that exist to advocate on behalf of teachers, school administrators, and others who they serve. And also that this legislation focuses narrowly on the field of K-12 public education in an attempt to directly address the situation that was brought to my attention earlier this year by my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee. I appreciate y'all hearing us out on these issues. So I'm going to lay my cards on the table on my full position. I believe the use of tax dollars for lobbying purposes is fundamentally contradictory to the notion of consent of the governed. You don't have a choice, you don't have a say on it, and it often results in you being compelled to advocate for ideas with which you don't necessarily agree. And this is on all sides of the aisle. As a result, I am of the opinion that banning any form of taxpayer-funded lobbying, legislative or executive branch, would be a solid move to ensure that we actually have a government by, of, and for the people, where we're able to represent the public in the terms of what their will is, not what they're compelled to finance. But speaking of on that issue, with the taxpayer-funded campaigning issue, we saw with the school choice amendment the incredibly illegal use of taxpayer dollars to advocate against a ballot question, despite clearly established state law that has been the law for several years now, stating that you cannot utilize tax dollars to advocate for or against a ballot question. This happened in several counties, including my own. This led to incredible public outlash, national reporting on the issues, and even a federal lawsuit that ultimately was settled in favor of the plaintiff. In Pulaski County, their school system were blocking constituents who were advocating against their openly illegal taxpayer-funded campaign against a ballot measure that was to be decided by the people, not by the government. We put these on the ballot for a reason. This resulted in very brave individuals making the decision to take this to federal court because they ultimately did not have recourse under Kentucky law. They had recourse under the First Amendment due to the blocking, but there was nothing that any court could have done to compel compliance with KRS 65.013. Simply put, a law without teeth is not a law at all. It's just a suggestion. So I would definitely urge passage of this and having an ongoing conversation, because this is just one instance. This is just one area where we see people ultimately having their voice snuffed out by being forced to finance issues that are contrary to their values. So I believe that's a conversation that needs to be had in all 50 states along with Kentucky. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions from the committee. I'll start with Representative Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to first start off and say I agree with you wholeheartedly about the content of the bill. I think it's very important. One question and then one statement, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Question is, I know it kind of goes into detail about resource. Is there a reason why you didn't, unless I missed it, didn't or don't specifically say school board, schools, school employees, anybody connected to a school.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we actually just addressed that yesterday, and we are going to add that in.
Perfect.
So thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm behind one day then. Okay.
No, you're ahead of us.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay. And the second question / statement would be, I know kind of coming off of all the issues in Fayette County, obviously there's a lot of issues there besides just this one. A lot of things that we're going to deal with in the upcoming session. Just a suggestion from me, this is just my personal opinion. I see taxpayer funding of lobbyists in this bill as two separate things. I think it's probably more efficient or even more effective to divide those two into separate bills. I don't think putting them together is the best route. Again, that's just my personal opinion, but I see those as two separate things.
We appreciate that. We will definitely review that and make a decision. So thanks for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for presenting your proposed legislation today. I think it's important that we have this conversation. I was very much aware of what happened a couple of years ago during that November election, and I saw the same things that you saw and heard the same things that you heard. Now, of course, we're talking about a state constitutional amendment there. I think probably a situation where you have proposed tax increases above 4%, where there are recall elections, is probably one of the more likely scenarios where this could happen. And you refer specifically to public questions that are on a ballot. But I've been here for a while, and I get a lot of emails from people advocating for or against proposed legislation using a taxpayer-funded email address, which makes me wonder, and I think that is illegal. It's my understanding they're not supposed to do that. So have you all given any thought to how we could make sure that taxpayer funds are not used to advocate for or against things like a proposed legislation in the General Assembly?
Chairman Tipton, that would just be banning taxpayer-funded lobbying and ensuring that there's actual penalties ascribed to that. To be clear, that as the government, it's not our role to tell the government what to do. That's the role of the people. That's what a representative republic is for. So that's realistically what that bill would precisely do. It would ensure that your taxpayer funds, your resources, local, state, or federal tax dollars that we're allocating are not going toward pushing the legislature in one direction or the other, pushing the executive in one direction or the other. Most certainly not the judiciary, which is something that no one should lobby anyway. That's a matter of the law, but that's precisely what the solution would be.
Yes, sir.
And I think this is an important question to ask. Is there anything in this legislation that would prevent an individual who happens to be a public employee from advocating for or against a position in their own capacity as an individual?
Absolutely not. That would be an unconstitutional infringement of the First Amendment.
Senator Nemes, next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this. It's needed, but there's some things that I'd like to get clear. What about KCO and KLC? Because the counties and the cities pay for their lobbying through a group. What about local government projects where they need not just a consultant, but somebody to come up and lobby for them, for the county judge or mayor, and that doesn't have time to come up and present it himself. For instance, when there was a barrel tax, there was plenty lobbyists for the industry coming against the counties like mine, and and we needed the lobbyists we didn't have to be on our side. So this, as you're presenting it, isn't just for a ballot issue. So can you address that?
Thank you for your comments, but we will vet this through KCO and Kentucky League of Cities. So we will look at that, and we appreciate you bringing that up. But that's something that needs to be discussed. Yeah.
Could I add to that's not my intention, Senator Nemes. I really want to narrowly focus on schools. However, KLC and KCO, I see them as similar with the K groups that I mentioned, that would be exempt because their role is to advocate for those cities and counties and so forth like that. Private business can hire lobbyists if they want to, but our individual schools
Right.
and
It's
perhaps
gonna be
individual
touchy.
cities should not.
How you write it, because the school boards could say they're advocating for the schools too. So I know your intent. So I just like make sure that you write it to the intent and not exclude some lobbying that is needed and is paid for by tax dollars.
Okay, will do.
Thank you. And I neglected to mention as we came on that we have some members of the committee on Zoom today. They're at their retreat, and I appreciate the fact that they've taken time out of the retreat to join the committee today. One of them that would like to ask a question or comment is Representative Lehman. Representative Lehman, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Chairman Hale. And I think if I'm, and correct me if I'm wrong, again, we're not there, so I appreciate making accommodations here. I'm looking at this proposed bill, Senator Rawlings, and I'm just trying to get my head around the real world impacts of this proposed legislation. In particular, if I'm looking at the wording and it says, prohibiting in either partial or impartial terms, advocating for or against a ballot initiative. I'm just trying to get my head around exactly what does advocating in impartial terms mean. Like just a specific example. I mean, we're talking, Senator McDaniel has been proposing, potentially a constitutional amendment to limit the governor's pardon power. I mean, does that mean, let's say, a prosecutor, police officer, sort of in their capacity of those jobs, if they're asked about, well, what's the real world impact, or again, impartially implies to me that you're going to ask somebody in an official position or a state position or a taxpayer funded position, what's your professional opinion about the pluses and minuses of this constitutional ballot question. I just, if you could help clarify what the lines are and what you mean by impartial advocacy, and again, when do we allow or not allow people paid for by the taxpayers to express, more or less factual opinions?
Yeah, I understand. It's coming down to a question of fact, like any fact scenario. It would depend on a court ruling on the facts of the case based on the wording. So, Rep. Roberts?
Sure. And just a further issue on my read of this bill as it stands, it ultimately would not change the substance of KRS 65.013. It clarifies the language and it adds penalty provisions. So it changes what the actual consequences are in relation to that substantive violation. So if an individual, say, is a county attorney and there's a bill related on creating a new misdemeanor, they can talk about what the impact of that is. That is just them giving an objective observation. There's nothing prohibiting that. Where it gets into an issue is if tax dollars are being used to say, vote no on this issue, no to this ballot question. That's realistically the consequence of this bill. So that's how I would personally distinguish it based on my reading of the law. Factual observations about a ballot question, okay, understood. Actual advocacy, when we think about the point where you're going from just pointing out what something is going to do to actually telling people how they should vote on it, would be the distinction.
I appreciate that. Could I have just a very quick follow-up, Chairman Hill?
Sure.
And just again, maybe I'll drill in on this. Or maybe it's just, this could be fixed up. I'm just not clear what impartial advocacy means. Maybe you could clarify that, or maybe there's some improvements in the language we can make.
It was intended to make sure to cover all circumstances, so that there couldn't be a claim that they weren't doing what they actually were doing. So again, it comes down to the facts. Those terms come down to the facts of the case and what was said, what was done. And so it's meant to be comprehensive in that way. And I'm not sure what else to say about that. It's just, it's interpretive, of course, but it's to be based on the facts of the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you guys for bringing this legislation. I got a question for you. You said a couple of times that it was illegal. Things that were done were illegal. Is it unconstitutional to use taxpayer funds for lobbying?
There's no federal decision on taxpayer-funded lobbying itself. There hasn't even been a federal lawsuit on it, but I actually think that there is a constitutional issue concerning it. Since 1943, in the heart of World War II, a time when patriotism was at its most important, the Supreme Court ruled it's unconstitutional to compel speech, even going so far to say it's unconstitutional for the government to require the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you want to opt out on that, the Supreme Court said that is your right. You have the right not to be forced to advocate for or against something with which you disagree. Even if you agree with it, you're not forced to open your mouth and assert your agreement with it. We also have case laws like Nationalist Society versus Forsyth County, Georgia, the Citizens United case that protects the financial elements relating to speech. And one of the issues of the First Amendment is not just the right to speak, but also the right to choose whether or not to speak. That right of silence is one of those issues. And yes, I do have constitutional concerns with compelling the public to make advocacy for ideas that they disagree with. And this is in so many areas that all of us have either advocated for or advocated against. But when it comes down to it, this is something that the public should have to choose. Take running for office, for example. Your campaign finance, that is all from the voluntary contributions of people who believe in your message, who made that decision. We can't force people to finance our campaigns. We should not be able to force people to finance our campaigns. Likewise, when it comes to advocacy in the public question sphere, the lobbying sphere, I think it's deeply immoral to ultimately say that the public must be forced to advocate one way or the other when the public's not really unanimous on anything.
Thank you.
Representative Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. Several years ago in Jefferson County, where I'm from, there was a large school board tax increase proposed. Tens of thousands of citizens got together a petition drive to put that issue on the ballot, and the school system subsequently spent tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees challenging and getting names removed from that ballot. Would a situation like that be covered by the language of your bill here?
It would. It should be, yes, definitely. I would say definitely should be. I would say it is, though. It definitely is. It definitely or should be, right? I'm with you 100%.
I don't mean to brag, but I'm not a lawyer, so if I could get a second opinion, I'd like that also.
My reading of the bill actually would not cover that. It's just the advocacy once something is on the ballot, because until the signatures are certified, it's not a public question. I do agree that it certainly should be. I think whenever you're doing certifications of signatures, that's something for the county clerk to decide, in my view. But I don't think tax dollars should subsidize a legal challenge. And I'm saying that as a lawyer, I'm advocating against my own industry there in terms of tax funding. But that said, I would take issue with my tax dollars being used to, frankly, interfere with the petition process.
Okay, so if we could get a yes or no answer from council here, we say, would that activity, spending tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees to remove citizen signatures from a petition outside the county clerk's office from a party in the, would that be allowable under this bill?
As it's drafted, I do believe it would be allowable, but I don't think it should be. I think that's a good suggested change to this bill.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Donworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for humoring us on Zoom here. I have a couple of really concerns to address, and Representative Grossell, I've addressed them a couple of times with you, or at least once anyway. One of the challenges for public entities when you're talking about doing a big organizational thing is that the needs of a Lexington or a Louisville or even just a city versus a county system are very different. And so when you're talking about using the associations to lobby on behalf of an issue, many times those organizations represent so many everybody, they can't pick and choose what's good. It might be something um, that is at odds. It's what's good for an urban district is actually at odds with what's good for a rural district. And so that organization that represents all of them is really unable to engage. And so that's really when individual entities need to have their own representation. I agree. I don't like spending public dollars on advocates or lobbying. So if anybody is watching who is considering that, I would highly, highly encourage them to use private dollars, philanthropic dollars, or to see if a lobbyist would be willing to do something pro bono. But there are good reasons that this happens as well. So I think the intent behind this is to protect public dollars, but there's also a reason why we have been able to do it. So I just would be very careful to make sure that we are not shooting ourselves in the foot by really limiting what our public organizations are able to do.
Thank you for that feedback, Representative Donworth. I wholeheartedly disagree with you. This is an issue of the haves and the have-nots in Kentucky, and right now we have Bullitt County, Jefferson County, and Fayette County, some of our richest school districts who have lobbyists, internal or external. No one else is doing it right now. The rural districts that I've spoken with, those superintendents just can't even fathom doing this. And so I do think it creates a situation where everybody is not on a level playing field, and those K groups help to put everybody on a level playing field. So I disagree.
Well, I appreciate your forthcoming. I disagree with you on that as well, in that they see very different types of issues, but that is for us as a legislative body to consider. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the presenters.
You're welcome, Chairman Hale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have I want to make sure I'm not missing something here. Representative Grossell and Senator Rollins, your proposals, and also Representative Roberts, the proposals that you're talking about here, are you wanting to put all of these into one specific piece of legislation, or are we talking about different pieces of legislation here?
Well, as Representative Lockett had questioned, or
maybe I missed that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. He sees it better as two pieces of legislation, and it is right now. That's how it is right now. We had talked about merging the two, and we thought that may be a way to go with it. So we're going to negotiate, or decide that and collaborate, and see if we need to keep it separate or together. So, did you want to say something?
Yeah, and I'll just say to what I'm talking about. My speech here was more just about the general principles on the moral constitutional foundations behind the issue behind taxpayer-funded lobbying in general. But in terms of it, I'm personally good with it either way, because I think KR 65.013 is a perfect starting point for addressing, one, adding teeth to the already existing language that prohibits taxpayer-funded campaigning, but also additional language to start the discussion on whether tax dollars should be utilized for lobbying purposes. I think it's a good fit. That said, if it's two separate bills, I'm fine with that as well. I'm good with however that mission's accomplished.
And Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up if I can. And
Sure.
Myself and Representative Grossell, we actually spoke about this probably 6 weeks ago or longer, and she was bringing this to my attention. And Representative Grossell, correct me if I'm wrong, you're primarily, what you have been discussing here with us today is more so directed toward what's happening in Fayette County. Am I correct about that?
Yes, that's what prompted me to take this issue up as a response.
With the issues that happened with the Fayette County School Board and the superintendent.
Correct.
Okay, so having said that, we have been seeing across Kentucky a lot of things with some watchdog groups that have been discovering some things with a lot of school boards, and maybe I should retract that, with some school systems that have had an incredible misappropriation of funding for personal things. Whether they had lobbyists or not, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You mentioned the 3 counties. Basically, is all you thought could afford the lobbyists, and that's probably correct. But getting just to a question real quick, you basically defining Fayette County. What about all the other outlying counties that maybe we have seen some things happening that's certainly misappropriating taxpayers' dollars with extravagant trips and extravagant meals and extravagant things that have been happening that we've been seeing, and there's proof of it. So how would that fit into this, or am I even wrong in asking that?
No, I think it's a great point. Every way that we can save public tax dollars and make sure that they're going toward students, teachers, and classrooms instead of on extravagant things like lobbying and trips. That's exactly the intent. I did not include travel or food expenses and those things in this proposed legislation, but I would encourage and support if anyone wants to take that up. I've heard people speculating about, a percentage of a district's budget that can go toward certain categories, how much of a district's budget should go toward administration. There are so many questions that you raise that I think we have to start chipping away at how these funds are spent, especially since such a large chunk of our general fund goes toward education. We have to get a little handle on it so that we can make sure students get the resources that they deserve. And this is just the first step, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it.
All right, and just a quick comment. This is a fantastic conversation we're having, but we are going to run up a time constraint pretty soon, so I'm going to entertain 3 more questions or comments. We have one other individual who would like to speak on the proposed bill, and then we're going to finish up on this topic. So the next one is Representative Decker.
This is probably shouldn't even say it because I haven't clearly thought it out, but I think it is something to throw into the debate, and that is when you're thinking about constitutional grounds for paying for speech. Government speech is not free. No one has free speech if you are a government employee in your line of duty. It's clear to me when the government doesn't want certain speech, the legislature can dictate that. So I think that could be thrown in here to be discussed too, is what happens, how far, you said a couple of times that, and I think you're exactly correct, that if it's an employee on their own time outside of work, but then you got to read all the cases that say, when are you speaking in your own capacity, whether it's inside or outside the building? So I just think government speech is something that the government can regulate, and that should be part of this and clarifies it in my mind to some extent. Thank you.
There was an article in the Northern Kentucky newspaper. 11 superintendents got together and advocated for a no vote on ballot issue 2. And when the reporters asked them about this topic, they said that they were doing it on their own time. So that is, that's a topic that needs to be discussed and vetted and determined. Is it on their own time, or is it in their legal capacity as a school official?
And I think it's such an important issue as well, because we've seen time after time where there's now public reports, to Representative Decker's point, to Chairman Hale's point, of other schools having these extravagant budgets. And this is not just at the school level, this is all levels of government issues, where one of the most common federal suits that I file is First Amendment retaliation. And we can think about cases right now. There's a tax levy on the ballot right now in an eastern Kentucky county where staff were assembled and were straight up told, voting against this, the same thing they were told in 2024, voting no could result in you losing your job. It's outrageous. It's something that we have to understand, that at that point, there's no way that's in your personal capacity, because you're telling these individuals not to take positions in their own personal capacity, threatening their public employment. It shouldn't happen for people saying vote no. It shouldn't happen for people saying vote yes. It should be something that we have to consider whenever and it's correct. The people have free speech. Government does not. So that's an important conversation to add to this.
Thank you. Anything else, Representative Decker?
Oh, thank you.
All right. Senator Herron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all. It's been a very interesting conversation today. One thing that hasn't been brought up is the penalty of the felony. Is there a reason why you all went to the felony and not necessarily a fine or some other type of penalty if this happened?
Well, that of course can be discussed, but it was determined that this needs to be determined to be a serious offense, so it doesn't happen again. So it's a deterrent effect. With something that's a deterrent effect, hopefully it'll never happen. But that was the rationale behind it, is the deterrent effect of a felony.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to have one last question. I'm going to come back to Representative Lockett for one more, and then we'll hear our additional speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. Just a quick follow-up and kind of piggybacking off of what was asked prior. Given a tax recall, this actually happened in my county just not too long ago, where the school board proposed a 5% increase over compensating rate. The school board then actively engaged in messaging to the county, emails to employees that said, do not sign this petition. I just want to encourage you to include that in this language when it comes to tax recalls. That is also using public tax dollars to actively go against what ought to be free speech in terms of, do I sign this or do I not sign it? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before we have the other speaker
That's
come up?
a really good point, and all these are good points and input. We really thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, that we could present these issues and get this kind of input and questions to deal with and resolve and get strengthen this bill or these bills.
Very well. And we do have one additional speaker. It's Mr. Michael Frazier, and I believe it's from Kentucky Student Rights Organization. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Okay, come on up. And before you start, would you raise your right hand? Please make sure the green light is on.
Yes, sir.
You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very well. And we're going to limit this to about 2 or 3 minutes, so try to make it quick. And please state your name for the record.
Sure. My name is Michael Frazier, and I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Student Rights Coalition, where we advocate here at the General Assembly for students, faculty, and staff to believe freely, express freely, and think freely on college campuses and promote civic engagement among student organizations across every higher education campus in the Commonwealth of Kentucky since 2016. So I'm here to testify today in not only in support of ensuring that we protect the people's voice when it comes to issues on the public ballot, when it comes to issues in administration. I would also suggest to extend the bill to higher education. When we come to taxpayer-funded lobbyists, especially third-party taxpayer-funded lobbyists, we need to ensure that we have an equal playing field. And what I'm talking about is particularly impacts the rural and urban divide. When larger schools have the ability to advocate and buy lobbyists, we create an unseemly power balance when it comes to the comprehensive institutions and also their students as well. We should be reserving that money, especially in the state of higher education, for actual higher education needs and student performance. So I would suggest to advocate that. I do like the idea, Representative Lockett, of splitting the bill. Because I think that when we look at the higher education needs, especially when we look at the contracts of third-party taxpayer-funded lobbyists in higher education, it is your all's constitutional duty to look at the fiscal responsibility of higher education and public post-secondary institutions. I would also recommend for an extensive review of those contract procurements of not only for taxpayer-funded lobbyists, third-party taxpayer-funded lobbyists, but also PR firms. And one university in particular that spent multi-millions of dollars on a PR firm to upend shared governance was the University of Kentucky. So that is one example that I would say that has a pressing need. And the main example that we have into why that there should be a constitutional look at what third-party taxpayer funding, lobbying, and PR firms look like, how they are approved by the General Assembly, and then how are we fiscally responsible for that? Because there is a purpose in the power of the voice, especially in students. And when universities, especially administrations, buy PR firms and third-party lobbyists, we dilute the power of the voice of what was meant to be in shared governance within students, faculty, and staff. Last thing that I'll note, that when it comes to ballot measures, I completely agree that ballot measures need to be included. From stories, Powell County, my own county, has been the example of the ballot measure on the nickel tax of late. And I have to say, from stories that we've collected across Kentucky, including one person willing to sign an affidavit for this, from threats of faculty and staff to business owners have been abrupt and apparent. Even just people doing open records requests diminished having their businesses threatened in counties and communities. One way that we see this most is how school districts use their public Facebooks as a way to advocate for or against or intimidate on ballot measures while also suppressing free speech in their comments. So in these efforts, I completely agree that we need to look at this, and we need to ensure that regardless if you're for or against, we must preserve the freedom of speech for the individual. And that leads to my last point. In any of these bills...
Make it quick, please.
Yes, sir. The personal capacity to speak on professional employees, especially in higher education, must be protected by Gassetti v. 2006. So please follow that precedent very closely so that we ensure that we don't have government speaking unethically, but we protect the personal speech of every faculty, staff, and teacher in Kentucky. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Roberts, you have a moment for a quick comment.
Yes. This is just a quick point because I want to bring this issue on the higher education side. I was a college student in the 2010s, and my experience of it showed suppression of free speech, suppression of basic due process issues, and it's a both sides thing that happens. And I just want to point to that because Kentucky's legislature has done incredible work protecting the free speech and due process rights of citizens. A lot of it is due to the work of Mr. Frazier and advocates that he represents. And I just want to point out that the amount of lobbying efforts that were funded by your tax dollars to directly go against First Amendment rights of college students, Fifth Amendment rights of college students, Sixth, Seventh, the basic due process, fair play ideas that when you're accused, that you should be presumed innocent, that you should have a voice, you should have the ability to present evidence, the basic idea that you should be able to speak your mind in public forums, that was trampled on. There was an unbelievable effort against that. So I agree that higher education should be something that should be considered on that issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Frazier. So I would say this has been a spirited conversation. Appreciate the input. I would say, Senator Rawlings, got some work to do. We look forward to seeing you back in the session when we have a shorter conversation about this. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next agenda item. The third item on the agenda is a discussion on the voting systems. We have a couple of presenters for this. We have representatives from the election systems and software, and also from Hart, InterCivic, and Harp Enterprises. I'm going to ask ES&S to come up first. And I will just remind you at the time, unfortunately, we had a late start time and we had a long conversation. So I know there's going to be questions for you. So hit the high points on your presentation, if you would, please. I don't want to shortchange you, but you know where we are. So first off, if you would introduce yourselves, make sure the light's on, and then we'll get started here shortly.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the vitally important topic of election security. My name is Jeb Cameron. I serve as Senior Vice President of Customer and Government Relations for ES&S, and I have with me Mr. Tucker O'Mell. He is Director of Solutions Engineering for ES&S. And we're here to share some facts about our company's approach to security.
Before we start,
Sure.
I actually need both of you to introduce yourselves, please.
Sure.
I know you have, but...
Sure. My name is Tucker O'Mell. I'm the Director of Solutions Engineering for ES&S.
And would you both please raise your right hands? Mm-hmm. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity again to come before the committee and share some important facts just about our approach to election security here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. First and foremost, ES&S is an American-owned and operated company based in Omaha, Nebraska. We've been in business and committed to safe and secure elections for more than 45 years. ES&S currently supplies elections technology to customers in more than 1,500 counties across the United States, including 23 counties right here in the Commonwealth. About a third of Kentucky voters cast their ballots using ES&S technology. Our technology supports elections in 3 of Kentucky's most populous counties, including Jefferson, Kenton, and Madison. The ES&S team members who support Kentucky elections live, work, and vote here. We take great pride in our work and our partnership in the state. We're here today to speak with you about the secure, auditable, paper-based election technology our company provides counties in Kentucky. We welcome the opportunity to share facts about our products and services because nothing is more important to us than protecting Americans' democracy through secure, accurate, and accessible elections. And we appreciate your attention to this very important topic. ES&S is fully committed to ensuring election officials have the voting technology that they need to administer elections, backed by voter-verifiable, auditable paper ballots, tools and methods that voters trust. Right now, the equipment voters in Kentucky see and use in their polling places include 2 main components. The first, the ExpressVote Universal Voting System, is a ballot marking device that uses touchscreen technology to produce a paper record for tabulation. The DS200 is a polling place ballot scanner and vote tabulator where voters cast their paper ballots after marking. Additionally, in 2 of our customer counties, ballots from those voters who vote by mail are scanned at Election Central offices using our DS450, which is a high-throughput scanner and tabulator. And I can tell you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that we are here to testify without reservation that the ES&S equipment used in Kentucky today counts ballots safely and securely. There's been a lot of talk about one aspect of voting that has gotten a bit of attention, and we want to address that directly, and that is, of course, the use of barcodes for tabulation purposes. And for that, I'll turn it over to Tucker.
Okay. Thank you, Jeb. First, why would our equipment use barcodes? Well, the creation of the ExpressVote goes back to around 2008, 2012, and if you recall, back then, the major negative impact to elections that was occurring around the country was very long lines. We can all picture in our heads the helicopter shots flying over polling places and seeing lines going around the block. And so ES&S, in an attempt to innovate, we devoted many resources to build products that would speed up the voting process while improving security and accuracy. The ExpressVote was our solution to help ensure that voters could cast their ballot quickly and confidently. We also built it to ensure that voters with accessibility needs, they had a device that gave them equal access with a universal voting solution like the ExpressVote. The ExpressVote ballot card uses human-readable and human-verifiable text along with barcodes, which capture the voter's selections. Implementing barcode technology helped us speed up the time it takes to tabulate ballots, as well as maintaining accuracy and in capturing that data. Barcodes are a trusted solution used in the variety of applications around the world today, including healthcare, manufacturing, banking to improve safety, accuracy, speed, and efficiency. My wife and I have 3 boys, and they were all born in the same hospital. They would all still be at that hospital if my wife and I did not have the correct bracelet on with the correct barcode, because they scanned that barcode on our way out the door and said, "Yeah, here you go. We trust you." Over the course of thousands of elections nationwide that have been conducted using this technology, speaking of barcodes, to our knowledge, no single ExpressVote card has ever been mistabulated. We know this because of testing, the use of paper ballots, but also post-election audits are paramount. But today, just as we have adapted and changed to meet the needs of election officials and voters over the course of more than 4.5 decades, ES&S recognizes that some voters have concerns about voter selections being contained in barcodes, and we're here to say that we understand. We support this increase in attention to election integrity, And once again, we are meeting that moment to support our customers in the Commonwealth and all over the country in their need for secure, accurate voting technology that voters can trust. In June of this year, the EAC released draft standards for VVSG 2.1, that's Voluntary Voting System Guidelines, offering additional clarifications on the implementation of its predecessor, VVSG 2.0, and changes to those requirements based on the President's executive order titled Preserving and Protecting the Integrity of American Elections. Based on those new standards, ES&S is developing its VVSG 2.0 and 2.1 systems to completely eliminate the use of barcodes that contain vote selections. ES&S equipment will use this newly developed text recognition technology for vote tabulation. That means the words that voters read and verify on the paper ballot is going to be read by our technology for tabulation. The most important elements of voting equipment remain security, accuracy, and voter verifiable paper records. Our go-forward technology enhances all three. We anticipate submitting our first VVSG 2.0 release for federal certification by the Election Assistance Commission by the end of this year and project a release for Kentucky that eliminates the use of barcodes to be available by 2027.
Thank you, Tucker. So as Tucker mentioned, ES&S is continuously improving, and as customer needs change, so will our equipment. But what's not changing is, of course, our commitment to being a dependable partner now, today, and for many years into the future. We are laser focused on supporting secure, accurate elections, again, now and well into the future. So the fact remains, every ES&S system we field undergoes rigorous testing by independent federal test laboratories accredited by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. We continue to submit updated versions of our hardware and software to the EAC and to states for testing and approval on a regular and ongoing basis. ES&S conducts thorough and pervasive penetration testing on our hardware and our software using the same modern security tools that hackers use to ensure that our equipment is secure before it ever enters into a federal testing program. All ES&S tabulation firmware and software are housed and written exclusively here in the United States. And then all final hardware configurations of ES&S voting machines is performed exclusively in the United States. ES&S designs and manufactures purpose-built voting equipment. We know where every programmable piece and part comes from and that it is free of defect. To ensure the sustainability of our voting system products, ES&S designs to ensure durability, ease of maintenance, and availability of parts and supplies. The ES&S supply chain is one of the most extensive in the elections industry. ES&S voting components are produced to secure ISO 9001 certified manufacturing facilities, and the entire voting system is managed by a secure engineering change order control process. In closing, I just want to say that ES&S fully supports all efforts to improve the security and accuracy of our nation's elections. We continue to invest in the strength of our operations, the resilience of our technology, and the expertise of our support teams. We hold ourselves accountable for raising the bar on election-related products and services, and we do view ourselves as an industry leader in adopting higher standards and continual basis. Our work is always in support of what jurisdictions need at both the state and local level. We are committed to the voters of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and ensuring that every vote they cast is counted exactly as voters intend. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to come before you and to appear before you today. And of course, we look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you. We have 3 questions. First question or comment will be from Representative Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate your explanation on your go-forward plan for the barcodes. I think as we discussed at this committee in the summer, it's our intention to disallow the purchase of any machines that use a barcode for the purpose of tabulating votes. So it looks like your company has responded, and I appreciate that. I also want to point out to everybody that we do have a law in Kentucky that in every county there is a randomly selected election machine and election that gets a hand eyeball recount. It's critically important for election integrity and for the trust of the voters to know that the machine is tabulating the vote the same way the humans are. So I appreciate your efforts there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Just out of curiosity, do you guys know approximately how many counties in Kentucky utilize barcodes or QR codes for the purposes of tabulating votes right now?
I can tell you that any county that utilizes our Express Vote universal voting device for all voters does utilize a barcode for tabulation purposes. So I do know off the top of my head, Jefferson and Kenton use those for all voters that come into the polling location, but we'll be happy to get that information to you.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Very quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Quickly.
All right. Is there any way for the voters to verify that, like, the barcode or the scanner itself, like, is actually accurately
Absolutely.
recording their vote? Okay.
Make sure the green light is on. The Express Vote actually has a neat feature that after the voter's ballot is printed and returned to them, they can insert it back into that machine or any other Express Vote in that vote center. And it's important to note that these Express Votes are not connected to each other in any way. They're not wired to, there's no wire connection, no wireless, no Bluetooth. They are completely separate from one another. So if I mark my card on one Express Vote and I receive my ballot card back, I can go to any other open one in that polling place, reinsert it. The machine will scan all the barcodes and produce on the screen a summary screen which details exactly how that card was marked and how it will be interpreted by the tabulator, in which it will go into later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rawlings.
I watch all these. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I watch all these presentations of voter integrity and tabulation, and they have these charts where it'll show the voter configuration, the voting count configuration going down to Florida, then over to Southern Europe, and then Eastern Europe, Asia. What can you tell us about that? About what you said about American configuration? Where all do these votes go to?
Yeah, so all of these votes are stored at let's start at the polling place level. So as a voter, when I go in, I interact with a voting system, I mark a ballot, I scan that ballot into the scanner. My vote is stored there at the scanner in the individual unit within that polling place. And then at the end of the night, when polls close, those votes go from that polling place, after everything is tallied, everything is reconciled, goes to that polling place, back to the county, so that the county can take results from all of those polling locations, consolidate those, and then report those results at the county level. And then from there, those results roll up to the state level so that the state can report on behalf of all counties. Nowhere else do those results go other than polling place to county level, central jurisdiction, and then those results roll up to the state for reporting purposes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually had the opportunity a few years ago to visit the Jefferson County Clerk's office. I think Representative Decker was part of that visit and got to actually go through the ES&S system. And this is a question that I'm asking it on behalf of, I get this question a lot. On your election machines, is there any kind of modem or technology that allows them to be connected to the internet?
I can tell you, Representative, that none of our systems by default connect to the internet. That is either the Express Vote ballot marking device or the DS200 polling place scanner. Now, I will say that there are some jurisdictions in the United States that do allow for the use of modems, and those modems transmit unofficial results from the polling place to the county elections office. None of those configurations are used here in the state of Kentucky. And again, our DS200 precinct scanners are not by default equipped to modem results. That is an add-on feature for those jurisdictions in the U.S. that do allow for the use of modems.
Anything else, Representative Tipton? Very well. Last question from the committee is Representative Hodgson.
Thanks, sir. Following up on that, it is a felony in the state of Kentucky to connect a vote tabulation device to the internet, so don't want our county clerks to do hard time in prison. So what can you do to assure that we are not substituting a piece of equipment that has a modem or a Bluetooth or some electronic connection on it. Is there any safeguard to ensure that machine has not been tampered with and to make sure it can't transmit or can't be swapped out with one from Illinois that does transmit?
Sure. That's a good question, Representative. I can start and I'll let Tucker fill in some gaps for me. But in terms of modem transmission, you can open up our equipment, our DS200, and see physically where a modem would be installed. And it is very easy to open that system up to see that a modem is not currently installed in that system. And Tucker, you can explain some of the technical reasons why that transmission could not happen without the presence of that modem.
Actually, Jeb, to be simple, his answer was the best one. The fact that, and he seems surprised by that, well, you can open up the case of the DS200, and there's a motherboard inside, and you will notice that there is a place specifically where the modem would go. That is not present on any of the devices here in the Commonwealth. We also have internal protections that ensure that none of our equipment that is coming to a state or Commonwealth such as Kentucky or any other state that does not support the use of modems, we have internal processes that prevent those devices from going out the door. The ones with modems, they only go to places like Florida or Illinois. We have internal processes, again, through internal software that we use that tracks the ones that have modems. They do not come within the borders of this state.
And I was kidding. We're not done yet. Representative Callaway.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify. So you're stating that it doesn't have they have the capability of connecting to the internet, but the modem is not in place on Kentucky machines. Is that what I'm understanding?
To be clear, the DS200, the tabulation device used at polling places here in Kentucky, by default, does not have any apparatus, any mechanism, any internal hardware that allows it to connect to the internet via hardwire, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. It has no connection capability whatsoever until an external modem is plugged into the motherboard, and those devices only go to the very few states that allow for and request the use of modems. Does that answer that question for you?
Thank you. Senator Titchener.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. As we have advanced with technology and adopted new practices and policies so that we can be more efficient, we see that often we don't get the results as soon as we used to when it was on paper. Can you talk to what can be some of the issues, and not necessarily just specific for Kentucky, but across the nation as we are becoming moving away from paper ballots and hand counting? What could be the causes of some of that?
In terms of the differences between utilizing technology and hand counting, I mean, I would say that would be part of the advantage of using technology within elections is that quick tally of results. Anything that's done by hand as opposed to an electronic tally of results is naturally going to take longer in terms of reporting actual results. Does that help answer your question?
Well, no, because we actually see a lot of states that it takes forever. It takes days now, whereas we used to see results the night of a presidential election, and now it's several weeks before we get the results. Does that make sense?
Okay.
It seems like it should be what you say, but it isn't necessarily the case all the time.
Yeah, and let's remember too that just in terms of, the result, getting to the official result of elections too sometimes takes longer, maybe not necessarily here in the Commonwealth, but in other jurisdictions, because there are other ballots outside of those ballots that are cast prior to Election Day or even on Election Day that have to be accounted for. Some states allow longer times for mail-in ballots to come in to be counted. There are also provisional ballots that are cast on Election Day where there are a couple of days that beyond Election Day where those provisional ballots have to be counted to make sure that they should be included in the official results. So I would just say the administrations of elections on the whole, there are certain aspects of that may take longer to get actual official results as opposed to just the results that are reported on Election Day.
And I would just mention, I appreciate the conversations about elections across the country, but our focus, of course, is what are we doing in Kentucky? Are we doing it right? If not, what can we do better? And I would say, by and large, we're on the right track in Kentucky. I do not see any other questions for you gentlemen. Appreciate your presentation. Whoop, we do have one more. I apologize. Representative Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be super brief. Is it your technology or systems that when you walk into a polling place that it prints out the ballot right then to vote on? Is that yours, part of what you do?
We do have systems that do that. In terms of here in Kentucky,
I'm not sure if they're utilized, but we do have a system called Ballot on Demand, where when a voter checks in at the poll worker check-in station, their ballot can be printed on a laser printer on demand right there at that moment. A lot of counties and jurisdictions use that function, that functionality to eliminate overprinting the number of ballots they may need, and which can be a waste of taxpayer dollars because what's not used at the end of election can obviously goes back in the recycle bin.
Right. So in terms of that system being able to connect to the internet, I know like when I go to vote, they scan my license, it prints out the ballot right then. Mm-hmm. I get questions all the time. What happens if the power goes out? What happens if the internet goes down? How do you get a ballot in that situation?
Yeah, sure. Representative, I believe what you're speaking of is an electronic poll book. Electronic poll book is a device. It's kind of like a tablet. We have one over here to my left. Our particular tablet, our particular poll book is called the Express Poll. It is often connected to a host computer that allows for the different polling places around a jurisdiction to communicate with one another and inform the other polling place that if I voted in polling place number 1 and then try to quickly go over to polling place 2 and vote a second time, that location is notified of the fact that I have already voted and my attempt at election fraud has been thwarted. That is the reason. That is the primary reason for electronic poll books. It's that across the county communication preventing those situations from occurring.
So if something went down, if the power went down, is there a backup plan for that somehow?
Many jurisdictions around Kentucky have backup paper poll books. What they will use is they will have an electronic poll book, but they will also have a backup paper one in case the power goes out and the battery on that device is exhausted. They would transition over to the paper poll book. If the connection between the different polling places is lost for a certain amount of time, those poll books are programmed to retain their own individual records, but as soon as connection is restored, they sync with one another so that the rest of the county is informed of what's occurred in that polling place.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask a question just for emphasis. What you described is the fact that they're a part of the administrative process that might be over the internet. There is no connection between those administrative machines and the voting machines themselves. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, very good. Do we have any other questions at this point? Seeing none, I will say thank you and also mention to the committee members that both manufacturers have agreed to stick around for a little bit after the meeting adjourns. If you'd like to go see their voting machines, ask any additional questions, you're certainly welcome to do that. And again, if you would stick around, we may come up with some more questions for you here in a moment. But thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have individuals from Hart InterCivic and Harp Enterprises coming forward. And as you're getting seated, I will mention that I do not want to shortchange you, but I'm respectful of everyone's time. So in your presentation, if I remember right, you have several slides. If you can just hit the high points, I would appreciate it. If we need to come back, we can do that as well. I would ask you first, each of you to introduce yourselves, and then we'll swear you in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everyone hear me all right? My name is Bob Heischner, Director of Sales for Hart InterCivic.
Ross Robertson, Vice President of Sales for Harp Enterprise.
Bobby Gantley, President of Harp Enterprises.
If you raise your right hands, please. Do you each solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today and have this discussion about election security and specifically voting equipment. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here. You know, quite often when we start talking about election security, it's not uncommon for us to focus on the voting equipment itself, but there are so many other aspects to a secure voting system and voting ecosystem. It's people, processes, facilities, physical security. So I'm going to take a few moments and talk to you about what Hart does. And talk to you about what Hart's holistic approach is to security. And then we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Now, we do have quite a few slides, and I will move through those rather expeditiously. So thank you. Hart InterCivic is a company based in Austin, Texas. We've been in business for over 110 years. We have over 830 customers in the United States. We service counties and local municipalities from the largest in the country to the smallest. Our Verity voting system that is in use here in the Commonwealth is manufactured in Austin, Texas, nearby our actual corporate facility. There we go. Okay. This will just give you a sense of the scope of our business. We're one of the top 3 voting system manufacturers in the United States. We service over 31 million registered voters that have used the Hart voting systems. We have over 105 full-time employees, and our product is made, as I said earlier, in Austin, Texas. I'd like to give you a quick look at the equipment that's being currently used in Kentucky. I think this would be on your left. It says the Verity Print with Auto Ballot device. This is an on-demand ballot printing solution. To your right would be the Verity Scan unit, where the paper-based ballots are scanned after they've been marked. To your right is the Verity Duo ADA-compliant ballot marking device, and to your left is the Verity TouchWriter ADA ballot marking device. Both of these devices perform in a very similar manner and meet the ADA requirements for accessibility. One of these devices is what we call an all-in-one solution that has a thermal printer embedded in the device. The other unit, is a unit that has an external printer attached to it and prints a full-face ballot that matches all of the other ballots that are marked by the voting. As I said earlier, Verity is an American-made product. We are located in Austin, Texas, where our manufacturing facility is. Verity is sold and serviced by a company right here in Kentucky, by Harp Enterprises. And I think that's a very important point for me to make as it relates to security and what security means as it relates to service and processes of the voting system. Testing and certification. Verity is an EAC certified voting solution. It has been tested by one of the 2 accredited independent labs here in the United States, by the SLI compliance group. And Verity is certified to the Kentucky standards here in the Commonwealth. Here are a few quotes about Verity and SLI, the independent lab testing that speaks to our level of security within the Verity products. I'd like to talk to you just a few moments about corporate security. Security starts with our people. True election security demands that people are a part of the equation. Election officials, staff, poll workers, and yes, even the employees of the voting systems vendor are critical to ensuring our election infrastructure remains safe. This is a core tenet of both our customers' relationship model, providing ongoing training and best practices sharing, as well as key training for our employees, and organizational operations. All employees at Hart, InterCivic go through a very, very extensive and comprehensive background check. Every year we go through extensive cybersecurity training through SFISA. We have ongoing participation in the Department of Homeland Security election roundtable discussions. We do very comprehensive crisis response planning as well, all important to the security of the infrastructure of the manufacturer. Hart is actively engaged in nationwide conversations on election security. We collaborate with a broad community of stakeholders actively participating in knowledge sharing, best practices, discussions on latest election security technology and procedures. We're very active with the EAC. We're active with the National Association of Secretary of States, National Association of State Election Directors, just to name a few. Product security. If you can excuse me just a moment. Hart operates by a method called defense in depth. Defense in depth is implementing multiple layers and types of security controls to maximize defenses and eliminate gaps between protections. Those layers include secure development processes, operational, secure configurations, physical, and software. Secure development processes. Assess, design, implement, and validate. All steps that are a part of the actual development process of the voting system. Secure configurations. Minimal attack surface. I'm going to speak to this just briefly, although I'm moving through the slides quickly. You might ask, what does that mean? Well, reduced operating system and hardware configurations required for polling place operations. So what that might mean is, like in the case of our operating system, we use a special embedded Windows 10 operating system. And the aspect behind that is to ensure that that special operating system functions only for the purpose of the voting equipment and eliminates all other activities within what you would normally find in a Windows operating system. So what that does is that reduces the attack surface from external forces to the operating system. Secure configurations include disk encryption, redundant data storage, and, of course, separation concerns. These are just some of the aspects of the secure hardware. Keyed locks, tamper-evident seals, non-standard ports, two-factor authentication for election staff, multiple redundant backups, no connection to the internet, internal office networks, virtual reality systems, or anything to that effect. Verity devices are tamper resistant, We have 2 external locks on the locking election medium V drive. Non-standard external ports, so that if anyone were to actually try to insert something like a USB drive into one of the ports, if they gained access to it, the port would actually reject that insertion of the device. Some more aspects of this, and these are the things that you would see most commonly performed by our partner in Harp Enterprises, but tamper-evident seals on various locations of the voting devices themselves, including the external handle of the case, the V drive compartment, and all external ports. Secure software. No internet, again, or internal office network connectivity. Cannot be accessed remotely by Hart or anyone else. Our devices operate in a kiosk mode. So what that means is that they will only operate based off of what they were designed to operate. So if you were to take, and let's use, for instance, a workstation, and someone decided that they wanted to play solitaire on it or something like that, or take with their V drive and download a game or something like that, the kiosk mode prevents that from happening on that device. That workstation is only going to operate the software that is actually designed to be ran on that workstation. We call this AAA security. Who can access, what are they allowed to do, and what do they do? Authentication, user accounts and passwords are managed by the software. Two-factor authentication at critical points are required within the workflow. Clear, plain language logging of all user and system action. Logging and auditing. All user and systems actions are logged and auditable. So whatever happens on that device, regardless of how large or how small it might be, it is a part of the auditable logs. This slide speaks to some of the enhanced security measures that are a part of the actual Verity system. As far as the devices themselves, we utilize a process called allow listing. So what that basically means is that only what is designed to be running on those devices can actually be ran on those devices. So nothing else can be put onto the device other than the certified voting solution that it was designed for. And this is just a simple look at the tabulation software that each of the customers in Kentucky bring their election media to at the close of polls and the end of the night to tabulate their results. So I know there's been a lot of discussion about ballots and barcodes and what is inside a barcode, and I just thought I'd take a few minutes out to talk about the anatomy of a ballot. This slide's a little hard to read, so I'm going to bring this one in. And Ross, can you expand that up just a little bit? Up one. One more. You got a slide on that? A copy of that slide. I don't know. It's making that bigger. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So what I'd like to do is just take a moment and talk to you about the anatomy of the Hart Verity ballot. You'll notice that there are two ballot images in front of you. One is the Verity full-faced ballot, which would be on your right. That is a hand-marked paper ballot. The ballot on your left would be the Hart summary ballot, which comes from our ADA-compliant ballot marking device. The elements, you'll notice that there's a QR code and there are barcodes on the ballots themselves. The elements within those barcodes include, but are not limited to, the election information specific to the election itself, the polling location specific to that ballot itself, the